welcome back to Green Mountain Mornings here on 100.3 FM, AM 1490. I'm your host, Olga Peters. It's 10 minutes past the top of the hour. And welcome, Melanie Winters from the Reformer. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Just as a note to listeners, BCTV is also here in the studio filming this morning's segment. And broadcast of Green Mountain Mornings tonight on BCTV is sponsored by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. So, Melanie, will you be heading over to McDonald's tomorrow morning for coffee with a cop?
I probably should. I don't drink coffee myself, but it is a great community outreach thing that the police are doing. A lot of police departments are doing this. They're realizing they need to connect with their communities. Mm-hmm. They need to have a certain amount of trust between them and the citizens that they're charged with protecting and serving. A lot of the police can't be everywhere. They count on the public to call them if something's going on and give them tips and so forth. And the public needs to feel comfortable going to them. So I give them a lot of credit for reaching out. And also just, there's certain animosity with the police department from certain segments of society, not going to specify which segments because there are a few. And I think putting a human face to the police and to those segments of society and getting them to connect, I think would go a long way to harmonizing relations in the community.
And that's a good point, because I think one of the intentions behind Coffee with a Cop, when it was started in California quite a few years ago now, was so often when the police and citizens interact, it's usually because somebody's having a bad day.
Right.
And this Coffee with a Cop is a non-pressure situations. Nobody's in trouble.
Right.
Nobody's gotten pulled over. No one's getting a ticket. No one's getting arrested. And you can just have a conversation. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so tomorrow's Coffee with a Cop, it's happening at McDonald's from 7 to 10? At
McDonald's from 7:30 to 10.
7:30 to 10.
I have 7:30 to 10. And this is not the first time they've done this. So this is, it's not like, once a month, but it's on a fairly regular basis that they do this.
Right. So bring your questions, as big or as small as they may be, to McDonald's from 7:30 to 10 tomorrow, and you can ask all the police officers your questions. Melanie, tell us a little bit about what's happening at Marlboro College. They recently had a visit by the New England, is it the accreditation?
The New England Commission on Higher Education.
Which is the organization
it's
that
the accreditation
accredits.
organization for colleges, yes. This is actually something that's kind of trending, a negative trend, if you will, around the country. Enrollment at small liberal arts colleges is sagging. And I think there are a lot of different reasons for it. So people can't afford to go to college. A small liberal arts college is quite expensive as opposed to like a state university. And, students are racking up debt and everything like that. So, they're putting more financial thought into the idea of going to college. Mm-hmm. And that's affecting the small liberal arts colleges the most, because as I said, the cost can be quite high and prohibitive for some. And so, with enrollment down, financing is down, money is down. I guess St. Joseph's College was put on probation just recently. Wow. But, Marlboro College is in a little bit better financial situation. They have an endowment, which is kind of unusual for such a small school. And they recently sold the Marlboro Graduate Center in downtown Brattleboro, so they got an infusion of cash. So, they're aware of the problem. Mm-hmm. They are working on it. They have a little bit of a cushion, so they're not in dire straits. Mm-hmm. So they have a little wiggle room. And, there's a lot of, community respect and interaction with Marlboro College. They do a lot of programs that they open up for the community forth. So it's not a closed-off campus. They really do try to reach out to the community, and I applaud them for that.
And they also recently built some kind of deal with the Marlboro Music Festival as well, which will help.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with the details on that, but let's see. We'll add buildings worth $10 million to the college campuses. So that's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, Marlboro, like you said, is not alone with some of its concerns around enrollment. So thank you for that update. We have to go to break, but Melanie and I will return soon, so don't touch that dial. Welcome back. This is Green Mountain Mornings on 100.3 FM, AM 1490. I am Olga Peters, your host. It is 19 minutes past the top of the hour, and Melanie Winters from The Reformer is my guest in the studio right now. So, Melanie, there was some good news for some graduates at Vermont Adult Learning.
Yes, these are students, adult students who, for whatever reason, dropped out of high school. Not a good choice, not a good decision, and they came to realize that and went back to school. And I mean, I think Jeanette White was a guest speaker. Senator White was a guest speaker at the ceremony, and she said she did it the easy way. She just floated through as a student.
Right.
These people had full-time jobs, they had families to take care of, they had homes to maintain, and they still did it. And that's quite an accomplishment. They still got their, and there's a certain stigma attached to, people who drop out and go back and, like, what's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with them. Life happens sometimes.
Yes.
You make bad decisions, but these people stepped up and said, you know what? I made a mistake. I want to fix it. And so I applaud them for that. That's wonderful.
Well, that's one thing actually about the U.S. education system. You can leave it and come back. And there are a lot of access points out of the system, but there's also a lot of access points back into the system. So, Vermont Adult Learning does work with a really interesting group of people, I think, who have really fascinating life stories.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it can't be easy to go back. Because first of all, you have to admit that you made a mistake. And no, that's never easy for anyone. No one wants to admit that. And it's kind of like, tail tucked between your legs, crawling back. I made a mistake. I need to fix this kind of thing. A little bit of humility involved in that. And that's not necessarily always a bad thing.
Right.
So I applaud them for sticking it out and seeing it through. So good for them.
And I'm not sure. I read the article in the Reformer, but I don't remember how many people graduated.
It was let me see if I can find that. 14 students, which is about half my son's future graduating class.
I was going to say that was more than my graduating class.
But they all seem to have plans on what they're going to do next, the next phase of their life, and it's important to have goals because otherwise you're just floating around aimlessly.
Yeah, which can be fun, but then gets very old.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think that's probably why they initially dropped out of school and then realized I can't do this for the rest of my life. I got to grow up.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the graduates said in the article that he dropped out because it was much more fun to work and party.
Yes.
And then once he watched all his friends kind of move on with their lives and get better jobs and get better paychecks, he was like,
Yeah, I'm going to be left behind here.
Yeah.
So good for him for realizing that.
Now, Saxon's River they've had many years in the works with the plans of creating a central park for the village.
Yep.
And it's finally really taking some steps forward. They just got some grant money for it, some brownfield money for it. What's happening there?
This site has been used as a mill. It's been used, I believe, as a gas station. So it's got all kinds of contaminants in the ground. And so what they have to do is they have to cap that. And my understanding is they can't dig it up because that would just stir up all the contaminants. Like if you had lead paint, you wouldn't. There's a special process that you have to go through to. So they're going to cap that, and they're going to create a park that the village has been wanting for many years now. And let's see, it's less than an acre, so it's not much, but it's a community gathering spot, really, and I think every community needs that.
Yes.
Whether it's just to have a town picnic, or a parade or, a school function or whatever, anything, just to get the town together and forge those community bonds that makes small towns so wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. When I talk to folks at the Vermont Council on Rural Development, as well as, I hope I get their name right, the Vermont, is it Center for Preservation? If I got that name wrong, I apologize to them. But they talk about, it's things like post offices and schools and general stores and parks that actually build community, because that's where people have those casual interactions of, hey, how are you? What are you doing? Oh,
you're walking your dog, or you take your kids for a day in the park, or just to hang out, or just to go there, read a book, have a cup of coffee.
Right.
You need to have that interaction, and that's great.
That community building. And so they have put aside just over $300,000 for this next phase of work.
Yeah, it says that the village now has $378,000 on hand. The project is still about $81,000 short, but they're pretty confident they're going to get another. They're looking for another grant and fundraising, and so they're, in a marathon stretch, they're at mile 25 or something like that. So
right, but it's exciting because this has been many years in the making.
Yeah, and it's a lot of volunteers and dedication and a lot of hard work for such a small town.
And I appreciated in the article in the Reformer, the writer, was it Susan Small here?
Yes, Susan.
She actually chronicled a couple of the mills that used to be downtown in Saxons River as well, which was just a nice piece of history that I didn't know about the village.
I believe it goes back to the 1800s. It says here the last of the mills, which made items from lumber, disappeared in flames in 1959, and the village acquired the Frey Mill site in 1979. It does say it started with sawmills in the early 1800s, and by 1835 had established a grist mill. And it just, all through the years, the last mill produced wooden teenware or small household projects such as bowls. So early manufacturing.
Yeah, we forget how many of our small villages had these huge mills in them.
Especially around, rivers. There's a lot of rivers, so there was a lot of small mills.
The good old mills, the good old rivers. We should touch base quickly on the select board meeting that's happening tonight.
Yes.
I mentioned this to listeners in the 7:00 hour, but there are a few public hearings that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
One is for the youth vote.
Yes. That's generated quite a bit of discussion in town.
I've
both
noticed
pro and con,
on the pages of the letter to the editor.
Yeah, and on our
Reformer.
Facebook page and whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
What are some of the pros and the cons that you've been hearing?
Well, the cons that I've been hearing are that there. First of all, the legal issue. Mm-hmm. There are certain voting laws, state and federal, that I would think the town would have to adhere to. So I'm not sure how that would work out.
Okay.
Because this is talking about allowing 16-year-olds to vote, whereas the legal age to vote is 18. So I'm not sure how they're going to finesse through that. There's also the issue, some have said, they don't have any skin in the game. They don't pay taxes, so they're going to be voting on stuff that they don't have to pay for. And others are, they're not educated enough. They don't have enough world experience or life experience to make these decisions. But, on the other hand, there's a lot of adults who don't have that intelligence and that don't do the research and don't have the information to make an informed decision, but they still vote.
Yeah. Unfortunately, age does not.
No, it's not an indicator of intelligence. As far as skin in the game, paying taxes, there are other people who don't pay taxes but still vote. There are people who don't work or have a job and still vote. They still have a stake in what is decided, whether they're retired, whether they're a stay-at-home mom, whether they're a college student. College students don't really pay unless they have a part-time job. 16-year-olds, part-time job, they do pay taxes.
This is true.
I'm inclined to support the youth vote. not on a national scale, but on a local level.
Right. For local
for
elections.
local issues, because it is their own town. These are decisions that are going to be affecting their future, their school, their education, the future of their town. And, they do have some skin in the game. And if it increases participation, which we all know on the local level has been abysmal. So if it generates some more participation and some more passion in local issues, in local affairs, local politics, or whatever, I'm all for it.
Well, and here's the thing that's really interesting. When I spoke to the Secretary of State's office about whether it was even possible for there to be this local youth vote,
Right.
They said, "Hey, the answer is yes and maybe." The answer is, if it's a charter change, any town can create whatever they want in their charter. The hiccup is it then needs to be approved by the legislator,
Right.
the legislature.
Okay.
And so they may or may not approve it. So that's the kind of interesting thing on the legal issue when it comes to the local votes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think people who take issue with the age of 18, I think, yes, for national votes, that is an issue because it's a federal law.
Right.
But for local, I don't know that age really matters. But we'll see. We shall see. This is the first public hearing tonight at the Select Board, and you can either go in person to the Municipal Center or you can watch online at BCTV. And if you can't make the meeting, but you want to make comment, you can email something to the town manager, and he will submit it to the Select Board.
And I just want to say, even if this doesn't end up the way these kids hope, I applaud their effort. I'm sure they will have gained quite a valuable civics lesson through this whole process.
I tell you, nothing teaches you about democracy than trying to engage in it.
Yeah.
Here is Natalie Knowles with your local news. Melanie and I will be back momentarily.
Now, the latest news with Natalie Knowles.
An inspection will take place this week at the former Meeting Waters.
Welcome back to this morning's Green Mountain Mornings on 100.3 FM, AM 1490. 38 minutes past the top of the hour. I'm Olga Peters, your host, and my guest is Melanie Winters from the Reformer. Hello again, Melanie.
Hello, Olga.
And tell us, we have a couple energy stories here for folks. The first one, let's start with Entergy, and there's been some staffing changes at the Vermont Yankee site.
Yes, this was not expected. This was all part of the decommissioning and closing of Vermont Yankee.
So they're stepping down.
They're stepping down. They're stepping down. They just as a review, they started with like 600. Excuse me, about 600 employees before they shut down in December 2014. And they've been gradually cutting back a little bit at a time since then, over the past 4 years. And they just announced the last set of layoffs at the end of this month. About 24 employees. Now that mostly because of the fuel, the spent fuel has been transferred into the casks.
Right.
So that task is done. So I guess they're moving on to the next phase of just permanent closure and going through the process to see if the North Star will get the project to clean up. There's still going to be a few people on site, just kind of a skeleton crew. But for the most part, there's, what do they say, between 25 and 27 people remain for the long haul. Basically just maintaining the site and maintaining some security at the site and so forth.
Keeping an eye on the casks.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's see, what is it? 50, just over 50 dry casks are on site?
I believe so. I don't see with a number. I don't think the number is in here, but that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it'll be interesting. I thought the NRC was supposed to give its ruling on the sale to North Star the end of September. So I'm guessing it should be coming any moment.
I'm not clear on the exact deadline for that. I know that they've had multiple extensions to get more research and to get more input and so forth. So I'm not sure the exact deadline on that. I know it's coming soon.
Yes, I think
know
we're
it's
all
coming
kind of
soon.
like watching. And now another interesting energy story was from the hydro dams.
Yes, Great River Hydro. And this had more to do actually with preserving the infrastructure and monitoring the condition of the dams. Not so much energy production, but making sure that they don't fail and people don't get flooded out.
More emergency planning type
Yes.
things.
I mean, anytime you have a big facility like these dams, like Vermont Yankee or anything like that, you need to have security. You need to check the infrastructure because a failure could be catastrophic for people downriver.
Now, one thing I was a little confused about, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. I understand that Great River Hydro is doing emergency planning, and maintenance, which you always have to do. But I wasn't sure if this was part of their, okay, we just bought all these dams, now we're just doing some routine checks and some routine emergency planning, or if something had triggered the process, a concern had triggered the process.
I didn't get any indication that there was a specific trigger to this. I think it has to do more with, like you said, they bought some new properties and some new facilities, and just just as a course of good property maintenance or management, you need to check to make sure things aren't falling apart.
Right.
Because I mean, can you imagine if there was a major dam failure, not because of a catastrophic event, but just because of the crumbling infrastructure or whatever, and somebody's going to look back. There's going to be studies and investigations and how did this happen and who's at fault. There's always going to be one of who's at fault. Who can I point the finger at? Who can I blame for this? And so they're just trying to do their due diligence ahead of time, and it wasn't me.
Right. We did our job. Well, it was really eye-opening to look at all the dams that they were considering, including Bellows Falls, Vernon, the Harriman Reservoir Dam over in Whitingham, Wilmington. And I think they were saying that Bellows Falls and Vernon are small enough that if they failed, it would not be catastrophic.
Correct.
But like Harriman Reservoir would probably swamp just about anything.
Reedsboro,
south.
I think, as they said.
Reedsboro
would take out Reedsboro.
It would take out.
And that surprised me because, number one, Reedsboro is pretty high up in elevation.
Right. It would just be that massive a wall of water.
Yeah, that surprised me, but that was interesting.
Well, I guess it's, it's a whole lake.
I'm in Whitingham, and I'm thinking, I'm on high ground, I'm safe. But wait a minute, they're saying Reedsboro's going to be flooded out.
Are you taking measurements of your front yard now?
Well, I'm not that close to the river, so I may be okay, but I may be stranded on my own little island for a while.
Yeah, the Deerfield's a powerful river. You forget.
It is.
You forget, and it's a long river when you think of it as well.
Well, it wiped out Dots. Half of downtown Wilmington.
Yes, Wilmington. It does not like to be caged.
And it's so funny because if you look at it now, it's just this trinkly little stream that's just like trickling through. And, it's like 30 feet up to the bridge. And you wonder how the water gets up that high.
How did it do that? Yeah.
It does.
When it all collects.
Yeah.
So were any of the towns that have the dams in their area, do they have to do anything as part of this emergency planning? Or is it all kind of
I think
hydro,
it's all
hydros?
part of hydro in terms of, just monitoring the dams and checking for the infrastructure. And, if they do happen to predict or see some type of failure coming, they have to notify people. And I'm sure there is like a chain of command that they have to go through for emergency services or whatever. I have not heard of any specific training involving local.
Right.
But I mean, they do, every once in a while, the local emergency responders do their own training for catastrophic events, not specifically the river, but just in general, in terms of planning out evacuations and command centers and communications and so forth.
Yeah, I think it was Mike Bukasi, the fire chief from Brattleboro, was quoted. One thing Great River Hydro put out was this interactive map, so you could see like if a dam failed, what it would look like for the
Yeah.
surrounding area. And he was saying that would be that's really helpful information in his planning purposes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that was the point of this, was to inform first responders, and so they can take the ball and run from it. Okay, so this is what we might expect. So now we have to come up with a plan of action, because I mean, the Great River Hydro can't tell emergency responders how to do their job. They just have to give them the information so that they have the tools that they
Right.
need. And one of the advantages actually of all those years of Vermont Yankee is that our local emergency responders are very, very well trained in
That's a
emergency
very
disasters.
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is true. This is true because they had all those years of preparedness.
Of coordinated, not just within one town, but coordinated through
Mm-hmm.
the region. And I think that's invaluable.
Now, Brattleboro Memorial Hospital,
Mm-hmm.
shifting gears and bringing it home to Brattleboro, is in the process of making some adjustments to its campus.
Yes, they want to add some boilers. They want to replace some old boilers with some new ones.
But the neighbors are saying that the noise issues and smoking issues and some other issues is really hampering them, and they are making an appeal to the
Yes.
Act 250 court.
Yes, they're appealing the Vermont Environmental Court.
Thank you, the Vermont Environmental
Yes, on the issuance of an Act 250 permit for the boiler project. They're saying that the sound studies were not accurate. They're saying there was some information that was left out that they were not informed of. So how can they mount, a counter argument if they don't have all the information? So that's one thing right there. The truck traffic, they say, is a lot worse than what they were told it was going to be. And you have construction workers, I guess, who are standing right at the corner of, in front of their lawn, smoking cigarettes and shouting back and forth to the construction
Right,
site
because
and all that.
BMH is a non-smoking campus.
So they have to go
they
off the
walk
campus.
across,
Yeah. So they end up on somebody's property. So it will be interested. The permit was granted by the District 2 Environmental Commission. And so we'll have to see if that gets thrown back to them for reconsideration.
Well, and what's interesting about this, too, is I believe the neighbors have gone to the Brattleboro DRB meetings as well.
Yes,
when it's come before
they've been
them.
fighting this for a while now, since the beginning, since it was first proposed. I mean, obviously the hospital needs new boilers. That's basic equipment that they have to have.
Right.
It sterilizes their equipment. It gives them hot water, and that's kind of necessary in a hospital.
There are things you want.
Yeah. So hopefully they'll be able to work with the neighbors, because, I mean, I can understand from a neighbor's perspective too. I mean, some of these complaints that they're talking about, it would bother me too. Trucks all hours of the night and construction workers right at the end of my driveway and all this kind of stuff. So, like I said, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, Melanie, thank you for trekking in this morning from the Deerfield River Valley to be on the show. Always appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Look forward to talking to you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Here is your weather. I will return after the break.